I guess we're live. Hi, everyone. Today we're talking to an artist, Pei-In Lin, whose artwork we're affiliate now exhibiting at Air Gallery in the exhibition Staying with the Trouble. Air Gallery is located in St. Petersburg, Russia, and if you're here, you still have a chance to go and see it in person. Our exhibition works until the 11th of April. This work that I hope we will talk more about today has opened a broader discussion about the viral reality and its importance in humans' life. And my name is Christina Watts, and I was a co-curator of the exhibition Staying with the Trouble, and I'm a curator of Air Gallery. And today, the whole team of the Air Gallery is happy to welcome Pei-Yin in our Zoom meeting, Zoom discussion. I would like to start with a brief introduction. Pei-In Lin is an artist and designer from Taiwan. She is currently based in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. Her main focus is on the combination of science and human society through artistic methods. As an artist, she is particularly interested in building a common discussion ground for different cultural perspectives regarding elements that construct our individual perception of the world. Recently, she has been focusing on manipulating the boundary of invisible, visible, living, non-living, and finding ways to build tools and methods that facilitate such exploration. She has won the honorary mention in Hybrid Arts category of Ars Electronica 2015, professional runner-up in Speculative Concepts of Core 77 Awards 2015, Bio Art and Design Award in 2016, and the first group of Taiwanese artists of residence in the program of Accelerate CERN. Please welcome our today's speaker, and don't forget to write your questions on YouTube. We will address them after the talk. Thank you for being here with us today, and I'm giving you the floor.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. So I guess I will start my talk, and then I'll start screen sharing. Okay. So hope you see it fine. So hello everyone, my name is Pei-In Lin, and actually for today's talk, I will start from one of my older projects, Tames to Tame, and leading it to Viraphilia, which is now exhibit in the gallery right now. So the reason why I start with Tames to Tame is because it was my first approach, or actually more like the second approach towards how human can live with the viruses. And why I defined it like sort of is halfway, maybe it's the first one or the second one, is because the first one that was the first project I was trying to engage with virus. I was trying to look at vaccines and how we can build up vaccines that protect us from the viruses. But then that's more like a war kind of relationship. And Tames to Tame start to look at a different relationship, because I got this award along with a scientist, Miranda de Kraft. She is a scientist studying norovirus in Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. And the interesting thing about norovirus is that it doesn't have a vaccine available yet. However, it's not as scary as SARS that put the whole world in hold. So people are not so desperate with the vaccine. So for norovirus, it's the virus that makes us puke, puke and diarrhea. And you probably all had it, because if one place in the world has an outbreak, then the whole world is going to be having an outbreak immediately. And it's so acute that you went through maybe about 24 hours of feel like dying because you're puking and diarrhea. But after 24 hours, you're back to normal, and then you feel like you can go to work. The thing is, without immunity, some elderly and young children might be affected by the virus for a prolonged time. There are like patients who got sick for a whole year and they might die from it. So this tricky position between the virus and the human, that it seems not harmful at all for us at the beginning, but if you look at it in extent, they're harmful. presents a threat to us, but then it also presents that we need to look for alternative way to live with them. So we came up with this idea of so if we have to live with them, and the process of biological life or the evolution of biological life is a constant process, is keep changing, then why not we just embrace the change and trying to tame them as if we tame the dogs or we tame the wolves to become dogs once. So for doing that, me and Miranda, we became the first tamers in the world, where we wrote up the manifesto. The manifesto is asking us to, for other people who want to be a tamer, that you have to think about 5 different questions. The first question is human versus nature. Are we a part of nature or are we separate from nature? The second question is you need to think about the position for the virus. So are viruses as wild animals that we can tame them? Or do we think of the viruses as enemies and we must combat them? The third question is about ourselves, whether we are individual or do we consider Homo sapiens as a whole? And we are making choices. Do we make on the premises of the human species, or we made on the behalf of ourselves and only look for the choices that's good for ourselves? And then when we look at where the viruses live, can we think about human as a habitat for the virus, or we are the host where the viruses invade us? So for become a tamer, you need to go through these 5 questions and trying to choose your own position and also trying to change your perspective according to it. So there is this norovirus. This is made according to the structure of the norovirus in this icosahedral structure. And it's made into this plushie because we want to build a closer relationship as if it's something that's very comfortable that you can hug. And we also went through our blood to see if the blood carries some information of our previous encounter with the virus. So what you see here is the fluorescent reaction of the antigen that's reacting to the norovirus. And we draw up this profile between me and Miranda. On the left-hand side, that's mine. And on the right-hand side, that's hers, Miranda's. For the red ones are the strains that we are more vulnerable to. And with a red circle that's really large is the one that we have the immunity towards, which means that I've been affected by that virus. And by looking at that, we ask if does this information change our behavior? Because we are the tamer, if we have to go or I have to go into a zone of outbreak, if I already have the immunity, maybe I'll behave differently. If I don't, then I probably need to be careful or make sure that I'm not a vector that transmits diseases to the vulnerable ones. So that's going to define us a lot. Where we also come up with, or I come up with this exercise that exercise are different part of the body part. So we get used to not touch whatever with our hands. We get used to cough like to the arms, and always make sure that you don't touch other things, and you make sure that you stay healthy and have a good circulation. And they also come up with this dense study of what will humans' behavior or human body movement change if consider the presence of the virus. However, after this project, even though it seemed to be building a relationship with the virus, but through this project, I discovered that, and I've been told by many virologists, that viruses are not just only those that are infecting human or infecting other animals and make them sick. A lot of viruses actually live with their host by living with the host. Sometimes they even give them beneficial characteristics. And that makes me wonder if we as human, we are sentient, so we can think about things, we can change our perspective, we can use different things to become tools. Maybe we can also try to change our perspective and change our relationship with the viruses by considering the benefits that they might bring us, but probably not a medical one, because for the medical, when it's related with medical, it's always about diseases or health. Then what if we are consider viruses in the realm of pleasure, and for example, cuisines, because the interaction of the viruses are manifest on different living species, that they change their structure as well. And that's what we call they got sick in a way. So when animals or plants got sick, their structure or texture will be changed by the viruses. And why not use it as a benefit? So Virophilia is a project that mainly start with a cookbook. And what you see here is one of the exhibition. I have a very similar setup in St. Petersburg this time, where the scroll hanging on the ceiling is the names of the viruses that we have discovered so far. And this list so far contains about almost 7,000 names, many that you probably won't be able to name. Many of them are beneficial to their hosts, that they live in mutual beneficial. And also, if you think about SARS-CoV-2, it's not even on the list because it's a subgroup under SARS. So looking at all these viruses, and the virologists are telling me that we have only discovered maybe 10% of the viruses that exist in this world. It leads to a lot of potential. So what you see here down below the scrolls are the books, the cookbook that's been printed out in pages where you can read. And I'll show you a little bit about the book here. So the foreword is written in a retrospective way. So I assume that this is a cuisine or a cookbook about cuisines that's been developed throughout the years. And I said myself, the writer in the future in 2068. And the book is asking from the history of virology that we also from the study of bacteria, microbiology, that we once look at bacteria as harmful, and the idea of hygiene is to combat the bacteria. But after maybe 100 years, now we are considering them as probiotics, and we need to maintain a healthy biome by looking at them and keeping them without killing them. Then, if the viruses are discovered in the beginning of this century, then perhaps, well, actually last century, then perhaps they can become under completely different light in the future as well. And they can be pro-virus or something like that. So and if the history develops that way, then here comes the recipes. So the chapter are divided into 5 chapters. The first chapter is trying to simulate the viral experiences and is data comparatively recent, which is in like now-ish in the next 10 years. And then viral fermentation goes a little bit further. And then viruses as active ingredient also goes a little bit further. Dynamic cuisine goes even further in time, and then ecosystem cuisine is the last one. So this is one of the virus simulation. This dish is for you to experience the sickness of influenza, but not really getting sick. And on the picture on the right-hand side, it's a mucus aerosol where you breathing, then you'll have very painful throat, but it's only momentary. And we take this pain as part of pleasure. Ginger duck soup in flames also make you really hot and as if you are having fever. And deep fried chili dumpling in icy form also sort of goes that way. So these dishes are using the existing ingredients to make your body react to it. This is also a part of the simulation where it's trying to simulate norovirus. So it combines the oyster and with chili on there. So you will have this very running, uncomfortable intestine after you eat it for a while, not for too long. For the fermentation, it tries to suggest one step further. So it stands on the premises that if animal got sick from the virus, sometimes their tissue will change. And one of the case, I start with a lot of norovirus cases because I'm more familiar with it. But one of the cases is that when the intestine or the animals being infected by norovirus, the intestine becomes more smooth. And one of the traditional Taiwanese cuisine is to eat the intestine. And it also happens in a lot of culture, like I think Spanish also do. So these farms are inoculating the animals one by one. So make sure that they will kill the animals and slaughter them, harvest the intestine when they are the sickest. But then this virus is developed also not to infect humans. So you can just eat it because it doesn't make you sick, but then it changes the structure of the intestine. So you can have this new experience of the structure itself. Pruning the drought, which on the left-hand side of the picture is another dish. Pruning the drought is using another virus that's more making the plants more durable to drought. And one of the prototype of this virus is really existing is the tobacco mosaic virus. Tobacco mosaic virus can make tobacco much more durable to droughts that they won't die if there are lack of water. And in this case, this recipe is a way of farming the tomato plants that they are infected by this virus, and they'll be more durable to drought. And because they are durable to drought, the sugar is in more dense proportion in their fruits, so it becomes sweeter. Then on to the third chapter. The third chapter is using the viruses that affects us, but then also use them sort of as a vaccine, but it's a vaccine that makes you slightly sick for a while so you can enjoy the dish, but afterwards you're okay again and you get the immunity of it. So you can probably only have this once in a lifetime or once a season, depends on how often the virus mutate. And influenza egg on rice is one of that dish where it will make you slightly sick with sore throat, slightly feverish, but then you can eat it in the egg because most of the influenza viruses are grown in chicken eggs, and they use that mechanism to multiply it. And also some of the early vaccines are also developed using this technique. So the eggs is being put on rice to create this effect. Another is also influenza balut. So you cook the egg, but you already have the embryo in there. It's also balut is a traditional dish, I think in Thailand, and probably also no, Thailand or Vietnam. I get a little bit confused at this very moment. One of them, and it's quite popular in Southeast Asia, and we also have it in Taiwan, but not that often. And you will have the chicken embryo in there when you cook it, but it's also the state where these influenza viruses are usually grown in the lab. So you can harvest part of the yolk and make a roll, make sure that you don't cook it so the virus will stay in there, and then you can eat it with the cooked embryo. Temporal Cocktail belongs to the fourth chapter. And fourth chapter, Dynamic Cuisine, it's using viruses to microcontrol all the ingredients in a dish. So the advantage of viruses is that it's very good at attacking specific hosts in a soup of mixture of different things. So if you have a mix of ingredient and you just want to kill a specific yeast in there, for example, then you can add a virus that kill that specific yeast. Temporal Cocktail is using the algae virus reaction as the design part. So Temporal Cocktail has algae in there, and when the algae are infected by the viruses, their strategy is to kill themselves immediately so they won't become the factory of replicating viruses, so they can protect their own species. So with this temporal cocktail, you add virus in there and the drink will slowly change color over time because they kill themselves, and the water will become transparent. And the last part I didn't put it here, but then it's more like designing a cuisine for all the participants in the food chain. So from virus to human, and to actually from virus to plants perhaps, or fishes, or smaller algae in the ocean, and all the way to human. And it's much more sophisticated, so I didn't put it here. But it's also asks us, like, how can you design a dinner for all the people or all the participants in this food chain where we eat each other somehow, but then we don't find that we are sacrificing too much, because the meaning of death is different for different kinds of animals or species. Like, for example, algae can kill themselves without adopt, but for killing a human, for suicide is a very burden thing. Like, we'll definitely not choose to do it unless we don't have other choices. For these, it also exists in 3 different videos. That I have an actress in the video where she's eating the virus, and the text on the side will indicating how the virus is interacting with her. And this project also exists in a performance form. So people are invited to have a dinner, and this dinner are the dishes either from the cookbook or new dishes, depends on where it is being carried out, what's available. They will be eating at the same time, listening to the stories. And it always happens like when they are eating, I tell them that viruses are entering them through the food, and they will start to have reactions on their body. You will sense that the virus enter their body and start to replicating, and the immune system is reacting to it. And so they will have the semi-sickness kind of feeling. However, it's not really containing the viruses, that there are ingredients in there that simulate this feeling. So in a way, trying to use this semi-theater approach for them to actually experience how it would be like if we have the viruses in dishes. And the last part is done in June last year in Taiwan, because around June, that was the time when the whole world is in quarantine. Even though Taiwan doesn't really have the outbreak, but people still take the measures. So we are not allowed to take off the mask in an exhibition space. So we decided to deliver the food along with the team in the exhibition, that they would deliver the food to the participants, where I link on the internet with them, and having the actress in the space also having one of the dish, and they will be eating the dish, and they will also listen to the stories online and have the discussion afterwards, as a, I would say, maybe Uber Eats delivery performance. And that's pretty much about the project Varaphilia. I guess it's a way to explore using the technique of changing perspectives to ask, can we think about these things differently? And especially, although this project was done before the pandemic, but I think it's also crucial now that we are thinking about the viruses and different aspects that they are existing instead of just looking at them as the pathogens, because maybe we will gain some relief from there, or we will get some fun from there, and not just think about how it's making our world so maybe to some people unbearable right now. Yeah. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have some questions, and I hope maybe I would have some questions from the audience. I have a question about your cookbook and the ideas behind it. So basically, when you are presenting it, you are talking about it in such a speculative way. And the book itself is coming to us from the next century. Um, but as I understand it from also a virologist who I was consulting before making the exhibition, we are eating viruses daily, and lots of our products and goods have viruses. So it is not so speculative at all, right? Because we have it in everyday food. And did you consider this while you were coming up with the idea of cuisine and viral reality? Was it the background of this idea?
Well, sort of. Like, I see viruses everywhere, but then it's also because they are so tiny, it's limited to our ability to sense their presence. And for the very moment that you are being infected with a virus, even if your body will react to it, you won't know it immediately. So, for example, for COVID, we go out, shake hands with other people, come back. Still, you have to wait for a few days to really know if you are being infected, even though you know it's being out there. So I find this gap quite interesting. Like, we are encountering them all the time, but we never really realize their presence. And a lot of people that I encounter or talk to thought that, well, viruses only exist in the form of a cold or the form of diarrhea, and as if something that's really, really dangerous, really special, to put it this way. However, it's so attached to every bit of life. As long as there's biological existence, there's viruses. And that, I think that sort of hinted this very daily life format in a cookbook, because for food is also something that sometimes we are not so aware of, because
Mm-hmm.
we are becoming what we eat, and it's not that everyone's aware of it. So I guess
Yeah,
there's,
definitely. I
yeah.
wasn't aware before the exhibition. It like wasn't in my head at all that like when I'm eating my salad, I'm eating lots of viruses. But then when I saw your work and I combined it with this new knowledge for me, I was like really astonished by this idea that this work seemed for me in a speculative way, but then again the knowledge that we're eating viruses every day, and that like lettuce have tons of viruses inside of it, and this just struck me because it's not like only a speculation, but it's our reality, and you're just proposing some ways of how it can develop in future if we change our perspective to viral reality. And this change in perspective, I think, is my next question, because you showed us two of your works, and you also have this work about vaccines that you mentioned. And you mentioned a little that after you made the work Tame is to Tame, you had discussions with people from virology, and can you maybe tell a little more what triggered you into changing this like perspective to the viruses from this warfare language that is common to our reality that we're all speaking of, and to this coexisting and like, becoming with virus, living with virus perspective?
That's quite a difficult question because I couldn't exactly remember how that happened. But I've been trying to do projects around viruses in the past more than 10 years. And in the very beginning, I was looking at the warfare between human and the viruses. But somehow it just feels very wrong. Like we're already at war with them. So it's already some extreme. And you don't really push that extreme even more because it's already at its limits. And I think that was how it was that gradually leads me to think about, and also because I learned more about ecology and the fact of how different species trying to adapt to the environment and their strategies, that I start to think about this coexistence. And also because I think the realm of biology and the perspectives of biology change a lot in the past maybe 20, 30 years as well. That when I was young, when I was studying, it's all about harmful bacteria and harmful viruses. But when I was in university, harmful bacteria becomes probiotics. And then viruses, now that the recent studies is already in the classrooms, that they were looking at the co-evolution of the viruses with other species. And there's also this concept about biosphere, which we talk about biosphere, that's all the biological things. And the virusphere is the viruses that connects all the biological things in between. So it's like an extended world of DNA and RNAs that has, and proteins that has the structure which link each other. And that also challenges the definition of classification, that there is this argument that species doesn't really exist, at least species doesn't really exist at the level of microbiology, because they do horizontal gene transfers also through the transfer of viruses. So these kind of development in science, I think, also changed my perspective on the go. So yeah, I think that's how I come into this. Like at the same time, I don't see opportunities of warfare, and at the same time, the new discoveries is already giving new perspectives. And as a cultural worker or an artist in the cultural realm, I start to see if this kind of perspective change can also change in art when it's interacting with culture, and what are the cultural artifact or cultural structures that can bear this kind of challenge of change of perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, this is quite big and interesting topic. We were a little bit diving into with virologists and medical workers in the one of the previous discussions as a part of our public program, when we were discussing this changing of perspective in science to viruses and all these developments which are like happening to this field of science right now, when we're knowing that DNA sequences of viruses are in our DNA and how they're affecting our body, our ability to give birth, our ability to like do lots of positive things. And you work with this team, and I guess it will be my last question, and it might be a little tricky. The idea of this question was given to me by a co-curator of the exhibition, Laura Rodriguez. And being this positive thinker of viruses, did it help you in any way to ease the anxiety during this past year? Did it like changed maybe your perspective to viruses as a positive, in a positive way or in a negative way, being so like open-minded to viruses as not, yeah.
Well, I think it's actually very positive in the sense of because I was already aware that the presence of viruses are everywhere. So it feels like I'm gliding in the sea of viruses, and I just need to be conscious about choosing the reactions that I'm choosing. So I do, because of the knowledge of viruses, I still have the control to some extent how I would like my relationship with the virus is. And from one perspective, I think a lot of frustration and anxiety of people was from this unknown, like because they are invisible, you don't know how easy you might encounter these viruses and your body's going to react to it. So from that perspective, I'm quite calm, and also my family was quite calm because of this, because they knew about viruses that I've been dealing with them for a long time. And at the same time, I think because the interest of viruses, it also shows me a very interesting layer of humanity when we come to the pandemic. That I know a lot of people were discussing as if there's only one way to deal with the pandemic, that a lot of Asian thinks that the Asian way of dealing with the virus is the only right way because that's more within controlling Asia. The European way is wrong. And while the European way thinks that the Asian way, especially the control of China, is very wrong. And to me, I find it very interesting that because I have this practice of putting virus into the cultural context and really seeing them interacting with different culture in life, you sort of see that the relationship, how we want to modulate or mediate our relationship with the viruses is deeply involved with culture that like for example, a lot of my friends, Taiwanese friends in the Netherlands, are angry at the methods the Dutch government is taking. But I find it probably the most appropriate for the Dutch because they know how people might react to it, and they remain a good relationship, or at least to some extent, as much as we can remain normal life. But also in Taiwan as well, that if the same rules are being applied to Dutch people, it's going to be like a riot, I would say. So yeah, I think to pre-engage with viruses in this relationship and this exercise of changing perspectives helps a lot with a pandemic or dealing with a pandemic as an individual. Yeah.
So in some sense, if you want to tame the virus, you need to start from learning more about it, like to go in deeply in viral reality. Yes, thank you very much. I'll look again if we have any questions. And no. So I guess we're done for today, and I hope that everyone who didn't yet see our exhibition will come, because it was the idea behind our exhibition to show the viral reality, to help ease the anxiety, and to see how virus is multi-layered and how it's not only an enemy. And we were trying to find ways together with Pei-Yin to coexist and to be coming with. So thank you very much for today's talk, and bye everyone. Thank you for watching us.
Yes, thank you.